Epstein is dead, but the questions he left behind are still very much alive. In a country that prides itself on law and order, how does a predator with this many connections, this much evidence orbiting him, this much public attention, how's he still leaving behind so many shadows and so few consequences for others around him? My guest is Jody Neal, a former prosecutor with deep experience in child abuse cases. We're going to talk about the gap between outrage and prosecution and what the Epstein files can actually tell us and whether or not our justice system knows how to even confront this kind of criminal at all. Jody Neal, welcome to the show. Thanks for making time today.
Thank you so much for having me. What great comments you just made.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We're excited to hear from you, Jody. From a prosecutor's point of view, what are these the Epstein files? What are they even capable of proving at this point? What can they never prove?
Well, I think there's a ton in there to investigate. Reasonable suspicion is all that's required to impanel a grand jury. And there are so many, we don't have all the names, but they do. And there is no reason why a prosecutor could not start digging into these files and putting together the map of which businesses were involved, which actors were involved, where there are victims. I think there's a lot to investigate here. It's just a matter of will.
It's just sheer will. There's not some sort of legal challenges or procedural hurdles. It's just purely this isn't happening because people don't want to do it. Is that right to say?
I believe so.
Yeah,
At
wow.
this point, to not have a grand jury investigation. Look, he didn't die that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my daughter's older than that. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why you can't get grand jury subpoenas, subpoena witnesses. It's all in secret. No one necessarily has to get embarrassed. But we don't have the full picture whatsoever. And Americans are very unsatisfied with the way this investigation has been handled, and specifically that there has not been one. So the government needs to make a move on this, and I'm here to call for a grand jury investigation.
I love it. Yeah, Jody, you're in good company here. We have a big ideologically diverse audience listening right now, and this is one topic that really everyone is pulling on the rope in the same direction here. So let's say, let's say that there is the political will to get this done, to impanel a grand jury. Why is it hard to turn this mountain of allegations, these travel records, all these witness statements? Is it hard from a legal perspective to actually turn all that into criminal charges if you do have the willpower to do so?
No. Look, we are in the digital age. I'm not kidding. Look, I did the opioid litigation for 6 years, and there were dozens of corporate defendants. There were doctors. There were, controlled substances, Schedule 1, Schedule 2. And we had databases. We had e-discovery platforms like CS Disco. You can tag documents. You can run keyword searches. I speak Boolean as my second language. So there's no reason this can't be done with the tools that we have. There's no excuse for it.
Then is it that, to what degree is the public just misunderstanding what's even in these files? What is a victim statement? What is an FBI interview summary? I mean, we've seen some really flashy headlines about what's in some of these documents that people find all sorts of reasons to dismiss, I think, because they don't understand what it is. What's in this file? What do some of those terms actually mean in the legal profession?
So these are documents that were in Jeffrey Epstein's emails, right? And Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all these famous names are making statements in these emails. Well, those statements are admissions in the criminal context, and they can absolutely be used in any prosecution, even civil. You of course have to prove them up and make sure that they're authentic, and you have to follow the rules of evidence, but they're admissions. They are statements of a defendant, they're statements of a party opponent, they're statements of co-defendants. Not only that, we have investigative materials, some of which you described. And it's really pretty remarkable that any of those have been disclosed or released, because those are generally secret. And thank goodness he's allegedly dead. I think there's a lot to work with here, not to mention the private actors. Look at look at what's happening in France. There were 2 or 3 different offices raided because individuals appeared in the Epstein files. Mm-hmm. The Norwegian monarchy is in real big trouble right now. I mean, people could lose their crowns. Not to mention our dear old friend, Prince Andrew, mm-hmm. who, and I love what the UK did with this. It was actually a small jurisdiction in the UK. It wasn't, M6 or, James Bond. It was, just like a regular province or whatever they're called. And they charged him with basically passing monarchy secrets to Jeffrey Epstein so that Epstein and his clients could make money. And I think that's such a brilliant way of finding the crime. That's not the crime the public wants to see, but it at least shows that someone's looking at these files and gives a damn.
You mentioned a jurisdiction, and I'm curious if you could kind of wave your magic wand and get this grand jury impaneled. Where does it even make sense to do that? Does this grand jury get impaneled in Washington or Florida or New York or somewhere else?
Well, if they want to do it in Dallas and hire me as a special prosecutor, I might take a look at these files.
Get her on the list. Get her in here.
Get me in there. You put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Man, what a gig that would be.
I mean, really, what difference does the geography of that grand jury make, though, in the case in the end?
I don't think it does for a federal case. Geography for a state court case, it needs to happen in the county where the crime took place. Mm-hmm. But in federal court, the federal laws are so creative. Even if a piece of money came through a Dallas bank, then that could give the Dallas U.S. attorney, jurisdiction to investigate. Just using a hypothetical example.
Jody,
Delane is in prison here.
Yeah. Sure. I wanted to spend some time talking about the victims. A lot of what the DOJ has released so far has been released in a very clumsy, bad way with some really strange redactions that can't be easily explained away. They're blotting out the names of the men, but they're not blotting out the names of the victims. They're exposing information that identifies victims against their wishes. What does that mean? What kind of damage does that do to the people who have already lived through this abuse and put so much on the line to speak publicly about it, if that's been their case? But even when they haven't, people that have never got in front of a microphone or a camera about this are having their personal information, put out online. Now we know who they are. They never wanted that. What's the effect on them?
It would be enough to institutionalize someone, probably. Not saying that has to be done, but if you consider the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children says that anytime a set of eyes witnesses an image, I understand that some nude images of children were released by the DOJ. That every person who saw that image basically created harm for that person. Mm-hmm. It's like an aggregate criminal impact that is hard to even comprehend as a human being. So the impact for the victim, they can never make this right. They should absolutely be able to be sued. You shouldn't be able to make mistakes like this and remain immune.
What are the most troubling reasons that you see for DOJ officials holding this material back or releasing the material in this, dunder-headed way? What concerns you most about that?
I'm concerned that they're not using a good enough tool, first of all, and two, not putting human eyes on the things that need human eyes. When I was doing a discovery, we would, segregate, the photos, the videos, privilege things, and some things you're okay to release, without putting human eyes on them. But some things you have to put human eyes on, and videos and pictures, especially of this magnitude of sensitivity, I cannot wrap my head around how these particular files made it into the public sphere. I know it's in breach of their ESI protocol that, there's a document that a federal judge signs that says this is what you can release, this is what you can't. They were not supposed to release victim information. That was part of the deal.
Mm-hmm. There is a temptation to reduce this to just the client list, right? On this program, we've had so many opportunities to kind of, we'll release the Epstein files. Why didn't Biden release the Epstein files? We should have seen the files. The files, it's not just like a manila folder with pages printed in it. Like the files means all sorts of different things. It means the emails. It means the FBI interview. It means the witness statements. There's so many different things that we just kind of lump in to this mountain of things and call it the Epstein files. But really the thing that people seem just laser focused on getting is the client list, as if there's like one sheet of paper or maybe two sheets of paper, this magic document that's going to settle everything and expose everybody all at once. Is that actually how these cases could work, or is that just too easy, too simple?
What I think that is a call for is sort of how the madams in the, Hollywood madams with the Johns, they kept these books that were usually written in handwriting that had the name, their preference, maybe what their rate was, something like that. If that's what they want, you can run search terms on this data set in a tool, and you can get all the proper nouns put together in a list. I mean, without the redactions, the government should absolutely be able to produce that information. But what value is it? Some of these emails, they spoke in code. Some of them were more overt than others. But the truth can be found with the proper tools. Just like I saw Bill Gates is supposed to be testifying pretty soon here. That'll be interesting. Wow. And that's an example of using the government's power in a productive way. I think they tried to do that with the Clintons, but I was really disappointed with the way that they performed in those, from what I've seen that's been released.
Yeah, I think you're certainly not alone there. There's a couple texts here from people listening. Here's one. This is kind of a layup for you. This says, why don't the victims of the Epstein files just come out and give up the names?
Well, that's a great question. I believe that a lot of them actually have. But then there's the issue of those who have been silenced through non-disclosure agreements through the civil process, the civil lawsuits, and claimants in the Epstein fund. And one of the things I plan to research is, are they precluded from from coming out and identifying themselves? Right now, non-disclosure agreements are a matter of great attention. Ted Cruz has brought Trey's Law to the federal level. My friend Elizabeth Phillips has put this law together and is passing it on a state-by-state basis right now, but it makes non-disclosure agreements illegal. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I guarantee you there are victims of Epstein and Maxwell who have signed these non-disclosure agreements as part of their settlement. And so it's probably really hard for them to watch all of this and not be able to say something about it. And boy, oh boy, would I love to have one of them on my podcast and let's just see what Epstein does about it. I mean, how enforceable can this really be?
Yeah, absolutely right. I'm interested in that as well. I think going back to this text message, I mean, it's probably also true, isn't it, that, any of the victims can come out and make a public statement and say, individuals A, B, C, D, E, and F using their full names, they abused me, but that doesn't mean those people are going to be prosecuted, right? It just means that you named and shamed them in public, which has its own value, I suppose. But if what you want is for those people to go to jail for their crimes, you just identifying them in public doesn't move the ball very far down the field, does it?
Well, that's true. And they also would expose themselves to lawsuit. And, these are people who have already defied all the odds just simply by being alive and breathing air right now. And, you don't want to be the person that gets sued for defamation by Elon Musk or Bill Gates, right? It's terrifying.
Yeah.
The criminal system would be the place to do it, because the criminal system would clearly be not just you saying something on the steps of a courthouse or in Congress, but the government saying, wait a minute, there's probable cause to indict you for these crimes.
Yeah.
At the bottom line is, you have very, very wealthy, powerful human beings. Epstein didn't hang around with regular people. He hung around with the richest of the rich. And these are people who lawyer up something frightful. And this is why people don't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. We're kind of closing up here, Jody Neal. There is a text here. I noticed this as well. And honestly, I was just going to kind of plow right past it. But somebody in my listening audience says, notice how your guest said that Jeffrey Epstein is allegedly dead. Say more about that.
Yeah, I don't say the alleged crimes because I believe those happened, but allegedly dead. Look, if you read Virginia Giuffre's book, she describes in detail that he swore to her. They had a very close relationship. She knew him better than anyone that I know of other than Ghislaine Maxwell. And she says that he swore to her he would never be caught, that if it looked like they were closing in, he would figure something out, and that he had every resource available to, sort of sci-fi stuff. Who knows? Did he graft another face on? We don't know. And the circumstances surrounding his alleged death are very curious. And I would not be surprised if he ended up showing up someday. I know that sounds a little bit nuts, but Virginia Giuffre made a pretty decent case for it in her book.
I think that is an extremely fresh take, and you've really given us a lot to think about. Jody Neal, this has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed meeting you, and the audience is all about it. Hey, tell us about your podcast real quick so we can follow your work.
Thank you. I have a book, and it actually launched yesterday. It's
called congratulations. What's it called?
Thank you. It's called Outcry Witness. It's a former prosecutor's guide to healing and justice after sexual violence. And so my book talks to anyone who is frozen, who has suffered a crime upon their body and just can't talk about it. Survivors are frozen. Silence isn't always a choice. A lot of times it's a biological response. And so my book helps people get through that so that they can say the truth about what happened to them. And then my podcast is a spinoff of the book.
Also called Outcry Witness.
Outcry Witness Unspoken. Only a few episodes, but I am loving it.
Got to start somewhere. That's great. Jody Neal, again, thank you for your time, your work, and your way. Really appreciated you spending time with us today on somewhat short notice, I might add as well. So really appreciate
Keep my number.
Yeah, we will. We'll keep you in the Rolodex. Absolutely. And we'll check out your book, Outcry Witness, podcast by the same name. My guest is Jody Neal, Texas-based trial attorney and child abuse expert and survivor.